Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're unraveling a truly fascinating piece of source material that investigates one of the absolute greatest mysteries of human existence, and that is reincarnation. We're going to break down this text's philosophical framework first, and then we'll get straight into a deeply gripping, true crime-style case study that it presents. Let's get started. It's the ultimate question, isn't it? What actually happens to us after we die? Okay, let's dive into this, because this universal question is exactly how our source text hooks its readers. The author opens up not with immediate answers, but with a pretty heavy philosophical critique of modern human behavior and our priorities. Part 1. What after death? So the text begins by establishing a really specific frame, looking at how society approaches, or, completely avoids the concept of mortality. The source points out this profound irony in how we live our lives. On the one hand, humanity engages in obsessive earthly planning. We meticulously arrange marriages, we build these big houses, we literally spend decades accumulating wealth just to secure our old age. Yet, on the other hand, there's this complete ignorance and total lack of preparation for the afterlife. The author calls this out sharply, essentially asking if this avoidance is sheer foolishness or just extreme procrastination. According to the text, failing to worry about the future beyond death is the absolute height of ignorance. And they use this incredibly vivid analogy here. They argue that if a person remains completely unaware of the next life, they're going to suffer like a wild animal that's just been caught in the jungle and tied to a peg, just completely disoriented, facing a harsh, unfamiliar reality without any preparation whatsoever. Part 2. Rules of Reincarnation. Right, so from that striking opening critique, the text pivots straight into the actual mechanics. According to the lore established in this source, ordinary souls, basically anyone who hasn't achieved total liberation, are caught in a continuous cycle of birth and death. But there are very strict boundaries. So the absolutely crucial point here is that humans reincarnate only as humans. The text explicitly argues against the idea that a human could devolve into an animal. The logic they provide is that once a soul has achieved a certain level of development, it simply cannot regress to a smaller or lesser form. On top of that, the author claims that human life, rather than animal life, is the true realm for experiencing karmic consequences. Why? Because the physical and emotional suffering experienced in a human body is completely unmatched. Part 3. The Mystery of Ramnagar. Having set up those philosophical ground rules, the source material transitions into a tangible, documented case study in Pune. Here, a 4-year-old boy, the son of a man named Bully Rajput, started making these persistent claims about a past life. He kept begging his family to take him to his home in Ramnagar, insisting his wife was waiting for him and was deeply worried about him. Now, for a long time, his family just ignored him, as you might expect, but he just wouldn't stop. Now, what's really interesting about this timeline of events is who actually took the boy seriously. Word spread, and a highly respected group of local professionals decided to investigate. We are talking about a lawyer, 2 teachers, a postmaster, and other prominent citizens. They literally took the boy to Ramnagar, specifically to an area called Machwatola. Once they got there, the 4-year-old took the lead. He ran straight ahead of all the adults and entered the house of a deceased man named Ramdan Kahar. Inside were Ramdan's widow and his 2 young sons. Without any hesitation at all, the boy walked right up to them, called the 2 boys by their specific names, and turned to the widow asking if she missed him. Part 4. Proof. The gold earrings. Okay, so recognizing family members is one thing, right? But the investigators needed hard, physical evidence, and the text details a truly astonishing moment to provide it. The boy told his former wife that at the time of his death, he had lost his ability to speak, which is why he couldn't tell her this before he died. He then instructed her that his gold earrings were buried exactly 1 hand deep in a specific corner of the house. Well, the investigators and the crowd immediately dug up the exact spot the 4-year-old pointed out, and right there, exactly as he described, they unearthed a small brass box containing those gold earrings. But get this, the physical evidence didn't stop with the buried box. The number 13 represents another stunning piece of corroboration detailed in the source. While standing in the crowd, the 4-year-old boy spotted a man named Ramji, who ran a nearby shop. The boy recognized him instantly and publicly stated, "I owe you 13 annas and I will pay you back." He then turned to his current father, Bully Rajput, and asked him to clear the debt right then and there. Bully didn't actually have the money on him, so the group of investigators pulled their own money to pay the 13 annas to the vendor, confirming the boy's exact, incredibly specific financial memory. For 2 whole days, this group of professionals rigorously tested the boy, and the text is very transparent about the results here. Investigators concluded his claims were verified with 80% accuracy. The author does note that the boy wasn't entirely flawless. Because he was only 4, he would occasionally get confused and mix up which specific events belonged to which specific person. However, the text emphasizes that the events themselves were 100% real and factual. The only errors were just occasionally connecting the right event to the wrong individual. But overall, his statements were deemed indisputably true 80% of the time. To really hammer home the sheer scale of this investigation, the source provides some pretty staggering numbers. Word had spread like wildfire, and a massive crowd of around 1,000 people had gathered. Out of that crowd, this 4-year-old boy accurately identified and provided some level of personal detail for nearly 200 different individuals. According to the investigating professionals, out of those 200 identifications, only 3 or 4 were incorrect. By the end of this 2-day examination, the text states that absolutely everyone present was forced to believe that this little boy was indeed the reincarnated soul of Ramdan Kahar.
Part 5. Conclusions on Reincarnation.
The source text notes, with a real tone of deep sadness, that the young boy actually passed away later that very same year. But from this extensive investigation, the author draws some broader conclusions, synthesizing the Ramnagar case into 3 distinct patterns. And this brilliantly illustrates how the specific story ties back into the rules we talked about earlier. First up, geographic proximity. The text observes that souls trend to reincarnate very close to their previous lives, showing a real preference for familiar environments and regions. Second, socioeconomic continuity. The soul seeks out a similar social and economic status. The author points out that Ramdan Kahar and Bali Rajput's families had very similar financial and social standing. And third, gender consistency. The text claims souls generally retain the same gender across lives. Interestingly, the author theorizes that when there is a deviation, when a soul changes gender in a new life, it actually results in mixed behavioral traits. They use this idea to explain men with traditionally feminine traits or women with traditionally masculine traits, suggesting they carry over the behavioral echoes of their past life's gender.
Which brings us to our final thought for today, and a lingering question drawn directly from the core message of the source text. If our past lives so heavily shape our present circumstances, our location, our social standing, our very traits, how should this change the way we plan for our ultimate future? The text leaves us with a stark warning against treating our earthly life as the absolute only thing that matters, urging us not to be like that frightened animal tied to a peg when the unknown finally arrives. Regardless of your personal beliefs, the source material offers a truly fascinating, meticulously detailed argument that absolutely challenges us to look beyond the immediate horizon. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking questions, keep exploring, and I will see you next time as we dive into another incredible topic.